The title of our lesson this morning is Crossing the Jordan River. Now we have to remember that Moses has passed away. He's no longer the leader. Joshua became the leader. And Joshua, according to the way God had things set up, he wants Joshua to lead the children of Israel across the Jordan River and to progress through this land of what is going to be called Canaan into this land. And he's already given Joshua the command of what he's supposed to do. He says, from this point to this point, and from this point to this point, I will give you that land as long as you put your foot on that ground. So that's what he's doing. That's the commandment he said. And I think last Sunday we counted some times that God told him to do something. And that was be strong and of good courage. And I think we counted about 3 times that God told Joshua that. Be strong. Don't be a wimp. Don't be scared. And that was the second part of good courage. In other words, don't be scared. I'll be with you. And as we studied from the time that they left Egypt, even before they left Egypt, and they went through all the plagues that was going on there, from that time to now, amounted to a little over 40 years. And God had worked with them so many times and seen such miraculous things happen, that because God told him he'd be with them. You're my people, I'm your God, I'm going to take care of you. And yet they turned their back on God and murmured and complained and one thing and another. But now's come the time when they are to possess the land. And so here it is, lesson number 12, crossing the Jordan River. The memory verse is Joshua 4:24, that all the people of the earth might know the hand of the Lord, that it is mighty, that ye might fear the Lord your God forever. And that's good ammunition for us. The Lord's powerful. The Lord is in control. The Lord is not going to let things get out of control. He might allow things to get out of control, but he's not going to lose control of the things that's going to happen. We have to fear God. And what does it say? What's that last part after the colon says? That ye might fear the Lord your God forever. Forever. From the time you start fearing the Lord till you die. And that's the intent of God. That's the intent of what God has for each and every one of us. I'm going to read the junior emphasis, much like the adult emphasis, but I'm going to read it. The time had come for the children of Israel to go into the promised land, but there was no boat, no bridge by which to cross the Jordan River. As always, God had a way. Had they not crossed the Red Sea? They did that before. That happened some 40 years before. They crossed the Red Sea, but it was different. I'll try and make that point when that time comes. It was different crossing the Red Sea than it was crossing the Jordan River. So we'll look at that. If you want to get your Bibles, because we're going to read some extra verses there if you want to, but we're going to start out with Joshua 3:1. And I'm going to have Brother Bayless to read that first verse, just the first verse only, if I could get you to do that.
So Joshua rose early in the morning, and they removed from Shittim and came to Jordan, he and all the children of Israel, and lodged there before they passed over.
Okay, that's the first verse. Then it skips down to 9 there, but I'm going to read verses 2, 3, 5, 7, and 8 in the Bible there, and kind of let you know kind of how the situation was. Verse 2 is, and it came to pass after 3 days that the officers went through the host. So they stopped there for 3 days. And then on verse 3, and they commanded the people, saying, when ye see the ark of the covenant of the Lord your God, and the priest, the Levites, bearing it, then ye shall remove from your place and go after it. Then we'll skip verse 4 and go to 5. And Joshua said unto the people, sanctify yourselves, for tomorrow the Lord will do wonders among you. Now, sanctify. That means clean up. Prepare yourself for the Lord. You know, if we say sanctify, you know, we prepare ourselves to be what God wants us to be. And you know, we have to be clean before God. We have to be perfect before God. You know, you kind of use that word perfect cautiously, because a lot of the world don't understand what you mean by perfect. They think that, well, you don't never miss any problems in school, and that's the kind of perfect they're talking about. But no, I'm talking about being holy before God. That's what I'm talking about. We got to be perfect, holy before God. And so he's telling them, he says, get prepared, clean up yourself, sanctify yourself, for tomorrow the Lord will do wonders among you. The Lord wants a people that is clean, that is holy. That's the only kind of people that he can work through, is the people that are holy. And so that was verse 5. Let's go to verse 6 there. 7. Let's skip 6 and go to 7. And the Lord said unto Joshua, this day will I begin to magnify thee in the sight of all Israel, that they may know that as I was with Moses, so I will be with thee. And that's what he's talking. And then verse 8, and thou shalt command the priest that bear the ark of the covenant, saying, when ye are come to the brink of the water of Jordan, ye shall stand still in Jordan. Now that's the command to the priest that were bearing the ark of the covenant. And the ark of the covenant, what was so great about the ark of the covenant? Well, it contained some things that was very important. It contained the 10 Commandments. It contained the commandments that God had given to Moses back years ago. It also, I think, contained Aaron's rod in it. And there were some things that was very sacred that it contained. And it was things that God used that was to be followed by the children of Israel. It was things that the children of Israel could relate to, because they had seen or had been told of the things that had happened, and that was what it contained. Most importantly was the commandments of God. We have to contain the commandments of God within our heart. You know, in last week's lesson, we were to discuss them, you know, meditate on them. And I think the last one was follow them, do what they say. And that was part of it. The commandments of God. You know, God didn't say, thou shalt have no other gods before me. He just wanted to say something. But he expected the children of Israel to follow that. Don't put any other gods before me. Did they do it all the time? No. Sorry to say, they disobeyed that commandment several times, many times. But you know, that was a commandment that God had for them. Okay, Brother Bayless, if I could get you to read 9 and 10, I would appreciate that also.
And Joshua said unto the children of Israel, come hither and hear the words of the Lord your God. And Joshua said, hereby ye shall know that the living God is among you, and that he will without fail drive out from before you the Canaanites, and the Hittites, and the Hivites, and the Perizzites, and the Girgashites, and the Amorites, and the Jebusites.
Thank you very much. There was no way I was going to be able to get through all them nice sites and bites and all that. So I appreciate you reading that. But these are some of the people that were in that land that they were to get rid of. That was some of the people. They were not living according to the way God wanted them to. So he's bringing this people from Egypt, the children of Israel, the children of Jacob. The children of Jacob that had went down there, which was descendants of Isaac, which was the descendants of Abraham, which Abraham was given the promise of a nation. Well, this is this people here that he has chosen, he has called to come in and possess this land of where there was a bunch of heathens that did not respect God at all, and to annihilate them and to possess that land there. They are preparing to cross the River Jordan. They are on the east side of the Jordan River. Probably, I think, isn't that Edom? Isn't that Moab or Edom? Or Edom, okay. And so they were getting ready to cross the Jordan River. Moab, okay, one of them. Okay, one of them countries, and they were getting ready to cross over the Jordan River. But you know, God had a plan at how to cross that Jordan River. Preparing to cross the river. What did Joshua do in verse 1 there? The very first sentence, Joshua rose early in the morning. You know, I'm sure that he thought great things are going to happen. And I want to be a witness of that great things that's going to happen. And you know, I don't know if it's going to happen right away or if it's going to take a little while, but I want to be right there when it happens. He wasn't in an attitude here, let's hurry up and get it over with. But let's get up and let's be ready to go when God calls us, you know. And you know, there's been times that I have woke up, I have awakened out of sleep, and I think, why did I wake up? And a lot of times something will come to me, and I thought, you know, that was only the hand of the Lord that woke me up and gave me something, you know, that it might be, you know, it might be important. Well, if it's from God, it's very important, you know. And, you know, sometimes you might think, well, that was kind of a little thing, you know. But it was something that I find out a lot of times I need that day. As I start that day or as I go through that day. And have you ever had a dream to where, man, it was so real that it sticks with you all day? Have you ever had a dream like that? Now, not all dreams happens that way. You know, some dreams you can have and, you know, kind of laugh about it. But there's other dreams that will stick with you all day long, seems like. Well, you know, when I get awakened out of sleep like that, a lot of times that sticks with me all day. That really does. And a lot of times, there's times during the day that, oh, okay, the Lord was just preparing me. Well, thank the Lord. If He hadn't wakened me up this morning, you know, how would I have handled it, you know? But He's got your attention when He wakes you up like that, or He does mine, and He's got your attention, and you know, because a lot of times, you know, we'll be busy with our day's life, you know, and all, and you know, we kind of think, well, you know, that okay, and it kind of gets shoved to the back of our mind, you know. But you know, when God wakes us up in the morning, or during the night or something, and you know, it really sticks with. Well, this is the way Joshua was. He rose up early in the morning. He said he's an alarm clock early, or God woke him up early in the morning. So Joshua, it's time to get up. It's time to get up. He was strong and of good courage. He was strong. Isn't that what last week's lesson said? Be strong and of good courage. Well, I think he was that. He was strong and of good courage, for God was with him. He and the people moved near to the Jordan River and camped there for 3 days. Now, do you think he knew that when he was getting up that it was going to be 3 days? Or do you think he went there to camp And then when God decided to move, he didn't know whether it was going to be one day or whether it was going to be a week. I think that's probably in his mind, he didn't know how long he was going to be there. But you know, God led him to be there 3 days. The officers told the people to sanctify themselves, wash themselves in their clothes, leave their work, and pay attention to this only. You know, when we come to gather in the congregation and we have a church service and God's dealing, you know, and we're really being blessed by the Holy Spirit, we're not worrying about tomorrow or worrying about what I'm going to do after church or how many chicken legs I'm going to eat for lunch or any. We're thinking about our spiritual things, you know, and that's what he's telling these people to do. Get yourself cleared of all this clutter in your mind, and let's concentrate on God for a little while. You know, let's concentrate, because something's about to happen. And it says, tomorrow the Lord will do wonders among you. Tomorrow the Lord, well, now how does Joshua know that? You know, that could be a murmuring that somebody might have done. But you know, I don't think if they really cleaned themselves up and sanctified themselves, I don't think they really had that much. Well, you know, because there's been murmurings against Moses, and we see what happened. You know, there was Korah, and what happened to him? Oh, yeah, the earth swallowed him up. No, well, we don't want to do that, you know. And then, well, matter of fact, his sister even murmured against him, and what happened there? Well, she became a leopard, you know. And yeah, maybe we better pay attention to God. You know, that's good ammunition right there. Pay attention to God. Tomorrow the Lord will do wonders among you. Joshua evidently must have got a revelation from God that something's going to happen. So let's get in step with him. Let's work with and not against. And you know, a lot of times if we will only do that, just harness up with God. You know, I'm not too real familiar with harnessing up horses or mules or yoking up oxen or anything like that. I have never done that before. That's something that I guess I'm too young to know that. Now, I have seen it done before, but give me a harness and I don't think I could harness up. I'd have them harnesses, I think, tangled up and everything else. But you know, but if we get in there and harness up with God and do what he tells us, he's going to put the harness on right. We don't have to worry about that. He's going to put the harness on right so that we can work with him. He's going to give us what we need, exactly what we need. All we got to do is be a willing party and be clean and be sanctified and be ready to do what he has, whether it's in a yoke or whether it's in a harness. Either one. They're two different things, you know. But if we yoke up with him or harness up with him, then we're not going to be in bad shape. We're going to be in real good shape when that happens. Then they would know that he would keep his word and drive out the people from before them. That was the promise that he gave to Joshua. Wherever the sole of your foot touches, I'm going to give you that land. Now, was there a place where the sole of their feet touched the ground that he did not give them? I don't think there was any. Now, there was some conditions that were not met, and there was problems because of it, such as getting rid of the people, and then they was tricked into not getting rid of some of the people, which they had to abide by that, by the covenant that they had made with that people, and that was due to the fact of going to God and getting your guidance and leading from him. And you know, if Joshua could make a mistake like that, now I'm kind of jumping ahead, but if Joshua can make a mistake like that, we have to be very careful in our everyday life too. That yeah, it may not have as much of an impact on a group of people, but it might also. It just might, and it will have an effect on you if we get out of line. It will have an effect on me if I get out of line then. Okay, let's go to verse 11 there. And behold, the ark of the covenant of the Lord of all the earth passed over before you into Jordan. Now therefore, take you 12 men out of the tribes of Israel, out of every tribe a man. And it shall come to pass, as soon as the soles of the feet of the priests that bear the ark of the Lord of all the earth, shall rest in the waters of Jordan, that the waters of Jordan shall be cut off from the waters that come down from above, and they shall stand upon a heap. Do you understand what that means? That means water piling up. Have you ever seen water pile up? No, it's usually running. It might get bigger and keep running. You know, you get a lot of rain, it just keeps piling up, and we call it piling up, but it don't stop and pile up, but it just keeps coming and keeps flowing. And up in the Northeast, they're having trouble with that. Lots of rain, lots of flooding, and I'm sure that there is some people up there that would like to just be able to hold their hand there, so that my house won't get flooded and pile that water up. But only God can do that. And God did it here. Okay? Do you see how different this was than the Red Sea? This is running water. Jordan River was a running river. The Red Sea was not running. It was still. And what it done is just parted, because there wasn't no running water, see? God just parted the sea there, and they went through. This is running water. Oh Lord, how are you going to make that work? But He had a way. And we ourselves, when we meet up with obstacles in our life, we a lot of times think, how is the outcome going to work? How is, I don't see any way out. But God makes a way for us each and every time. Well, that's the same way here that they were doing here. Telling the people, Joshua explained that the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord would go before them into Jordan. Now, why did it go before instead of after? Well, for one thing, we are to follow the commandments of God. We don't set the commandments. God's already set the commandments. We were too late. We come along too late to set the commandments. We wouldn't have been able to anyway, but the commandments are already set. What God has said, God expects that of us. Well, I wasn't born until 1955, so the commandments was already set. the way of salvation was already set over 1900 years before I come along. So, man can't set it. Man tries to sometimes. You see that all the time. Well, you do this and this and this and you're fine, Well, if it's according to the Bible, yeah, it's fine. But a lot of times it's not according to the Bible. It's according to somebody's idea. And that's what gets us in trouble. So he says, telling the people, Joshua explained that the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord would go before them into Jordan. There's where the power was, right there, in the Ark of the Covenant. God was the power of that. Some of them could have swum across, but there was probably some of them that couldn't swim, and that was not what God intended for them to do.
They didn't learn to swim walking in the desert
for 40 years. Yeah, when they had to whine and cry because they didn't have water, so they surely didn't have enough water to swim in, did they? That's true. The priest would carry it. the priest would carry it. You know, God had always set that up to where the priest would take care of the Ark of the Covenant. You know, David got in trouble one time because he had it on a brand new cart drawn by certain animals, perfect animals, you know. But that's not what God wanted. And a man lost his life because of that. Following what God has for us each and every day. You know, I can't stress that too much. This had a meaning that God was going before them. The people would follow the ark, but not too near. They should choose 12 men. What for? We will see. As soon as the soles of the feet of the priest shall rest in the waters, the river will divide. And that's what God had promised. You know, we could make something like an ark, and you know, we could make a 10 Commandments and all this, and think we have all kinds of power because we got the Ark of the Covenant. But you know, the bad thing about it, God wouldn't be in that, because God's not in little relics like that anymore. This was not a relic back then. These was very important. But today, if we would do that, it would be just a relic, because we're in a different dispensation of time, and we have Christ within our heart. That is the difference. And we as people need to realize that we cannot do a lot of things that they did back then because of the being in a different dispensation of time then. We still, and again I'm going to say, we still have to follow what God has for us each and every day. You know, God has a plan for each and every one of us each and every day. I've stressed that so many times that you probably get tired of hearing me say that, but it's true. Verse 14, and it came to pass when the people removed from their tents to pass over Jordan, and the priest bearing the Ark of the Covenant before the people. Verse 15, and as they that bear the ark were coming to the Jordan, and the feet of the priests that bear the ark were dipped in the brim of the water, for Jordan, this is in parentheses here, for Jordan overfloweth all its banks all the time of harvest. So what he's saying, it's in a flood stage. Well, what happens in a flood stage? There's a whole lot more water than there is when it's in a dry stage or in a drought. So, you know, man, we picked the wrong time to go across. You know, we might focus on that. We should have waited until, 6 months, because it'll be a whole lot less water, you know. But no, you know, when God tells us to do something and to do it now, He don't mean for you to do it 6 months from now. You know, 6 months from now, and now is kind of like, but it's a whole lot different though, too. The now is still on there, but that means right now. And so, you know, well, it seems like it's the wrong season to be crossing, but, you know, Joshua is our leader. Joshua is in tune with God, so let's follow what God has for us. Verse 16, that the waters which came down from above stood and rose up upon a heap very far from the city Adam, that is beside, I can't pronounce that. And those that came down toward the sea of the plain, even the salt sea, failed and were cut off, and the people passed over right against Jericho. Verse 17, and the priest that bare the ark of the covenant of the Lord stood firm on dry ground in the midst of Jordan, and all the Israelites passed over on dry ground until all the people were passed clean over Jordan. In the bottom of a river or in the bottom of the sea, what do you usually find? Mud. Miry mud a lot of times. But you know, God had that prepared, didn't He? He had that dried You know, and that's the same way it was in the Red Sea. You know, I think a wind blew all night and parted the water and dried it. But, you know, it sounded like this was just instantly. You know, God said it, and it happened. You know, you might call it the Big Bang Theory. You know, I believe in the Big Bang Theory. God said it, and bang, it happened, you know. But, you know, that's kind of what happened here, you know, that he had prepared a miracle, the miracle of the crossing. The priest carried the ark. The people followed. You know, that's the way we want it. We want God to lead, and we will follow. Now, once in a while, you know, we kind of get out of line, or I do, get out of line, get ahead of God. Whoop, 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 whoop. Wait a minute, I got to back up a little. I'm kind of jumping ahead of God, or I'm kind of veering off one way or another. Whoop, I better get back in here, you know. Kind of like the sheep, you know, on our poster there. Like the sheep, you know, every once in a while they'll see some grass over there and they'll kind of veer off, and you know, the shepherd kind of, well, you know, you need to get back over here with the rest of us because you don't know, maybe there might be a wolf right there pretty close. So, you know, we have to follow. Whithersoever he goeth, we will follow. You know, that's the best ammunition. The water was overflowing the banks of the river. When the priest's feet dipped in the brim of the water divided just as God had said. The upper water, the water as it flowing down, the upper water backed up and stood upon a heap, or a wall of water at the right side of the people. As they was walking, that water just kept, I could just see it just keep getting bigger and bigger, because it took a while for 1 million people to, or whatever, 2 million, it might have been close to 2 million people going across there, you know. It took a while, you know, and I can just imagine. Man, I'd want to be one of the first ones because it wouldn't be quite as tall, you know, but, you know, it didn't make any difference. It was going to stay there until all got across right. Wonder how high that water really actually got. Several stories high, probably, you know. And nothing holding it. There wasn't no dam there or nothing. There wasn't any kind of gates or anything. Nothing there. It's only by the hand of God. And, you know, sometimes we might look at the trial or the temptation that's coming on us, and yes, how many trials do we have, our little bitty trials? You know, at the time they're always big. Have you ever noticed that? They're always big. You know, they're that big old heap of water holding up there, you know. Now, after you get through it, well, you kind of look back and you think, man, I can be thankful that God got me through that trial. But, you know, it wasn't really all that big a trial. It could have been a lot worse, you know. But I thank the Lord. We always need to be thankful because of it. But, you know, we look back and we see that some of the trials we thought was awful big may not be quite as big as what we thought. But, you know, we can still be thankful, and we need to be thankful that God took us through. You know, after this was all, just think how tall that water was. And then after it was all done, they look back and they think, my, how the Lord undertook for us. And here I was doubting in my mind at how we were going to get across because it was flood time, see, you know. And so it's something that we can use in our own life by looking at it that way. A wall of water at the right side of the people. The lower water ran on down to the salt sea. I think that was the Dead Sea is what he was talking about. But it ran on down, you know. But this wall of water here standing. There was a path of dry ground across the river. Now that was a miracle too, right there, the dry ground. The priest with the ark went to the middle of the river and stood still. All the Israelites passed over on the dry ground. And I kind of told you that when they looked back you know, that, yeah, they kind of look back and it wasn't, you know, I mean, it was accomplished and all, but still, and I'm going to say again, still, it was a great miracle of God, something that had to be appreciated by the children of Israel. This was the second time that God divided water for Israel to cross. First was the Red Sea, and now it was across the Jordan River. And both of them were miracles. Both of them was miracles. And you know, God will sometimes work the same way, but then there's lots of times that He doesn't want us to get into a rut and think, oh well, God's going to take care of it this way, and we've all got it all planned out and how it's going to happen, and then that's when a lot of times things gets changed and God works completely different. And a lot of times it's I'll say all the time, it's always for our good. It's always for our good. If we look back and see the different times that God might have did things a little different, you can see a lot of times why it was done a little bit different. It might be to help you to be able to spread the gospel to somebody else. Sure. And it'll be for their benefit. Although it's our benefit too, because we can appreciate what God has done and all, and give Him the glory for it. We don't want to ever forget to give God the glory for what He does for the things that He does for each and every one of us. And then as okay, we'll skip on over. We'll skip on over to Joshua 4:4. Then Joshua called the 12 men. Remember, he picked one man out of each tribe. And Joshua called the 12 men whom he had prepared of the children of Israel out of every tribe man. And Joshua said unto them, Pass over before the ark of the Lord your God into the midst of the Jordan, and take ye up every man of you a stone upon his shoulder, according unto the number of the tribes of the children of Israel, that this may be a sign among you, that when your children ask their fathers in time to come, saying, What mean ye by these stones? Then ye shall answer them, that the waters of Jordan were cut off before the ark of the covenant of the Lord, when it passed over Jordan. The waters of Jordan were cut off, and these stones shall be for a memorial unto the children of Israel forever. What he's saying here is that they were to take stones out of the river and bring them up and set up a memorial, so that when children yet to be born, generations from now, when they see these stones, well, Daddy, Mama, what's these stones mean here? Why are they set up? Well, they can tell them, well, that was when this happened. This is when God parted the waters for us to be able to come over into this land. You know, I love to read American history and hear American history now. When I was younger and in school, what good's American history to me, you know? And that's kind of the attitude I took. And I've said it many a time, if I was to go through a history class, I would be a whole lot more interested than I was 45 years ago when I was in school. But because it's very interesting to look back and see how this country was started, and who started this country, and how God, and you cannot read that kind of history thinking that it all happened as a coincidence. God had a hand in what was being set up and how it was being set up and how the Revolutionary War was won and how different fights was fought. And oh yes, They lost a few fights. The Americans, the colonists, lost some fights. You know, the British and the English all won some battles. But you know how God's hand on the ones that was important and all, how God's hand, how a miracle with God happened on a lot of the battles that were accomplished and won. We as people today can look back on that kind of as a memorial, and we kind of see how he was setting up a memorial for these children that's yet to be born and yet to come. Setting up a memorial. When people were safe across the river, Joshua called those 12 men. He sent them back to where the priest stood in the midst of Jordan. Each had to bring a large stone from there. They were to put the stones in the place where they lodged or camped at night. It would be a memorial of this miracle. When your children, here's what he says, when your children ask, "What mean ye by these stones?" then ye shall answer, "The waters of Jordan was cut off." And tell the story. This is kind of a vocal point for the children to kind of settle down and realize that, oh, what mom and dad's been telling me is actually what really happened because of this, you know. Joshua also made another memorial by piling up 12 stones in the river where the priest stood. When all was finished, Joshua called the priest up out of the Jordan. Now listen to this, when their feet touched the dry land, the waters of Jordan returned unto their place and flowed over all its banks again. That will be found in verse 18. I think it's chapter 4 of Joshua, verse 18. God can do anything. You know, there's a song, "My God can do anything, anything." I can remember that when I was a child. My God can do anything. I know that was a song that us young people used to sing a lot of times at camp meeting up there in Happy Hill. And my God can do anything. There's nothing that God can't do. And you know, we can say that, but do we really believe it? You know, I think after all this happened here with Joshua and the children of Israel, you know, I think they realized, you know, I think God has called Joshua to be our leader. Not only do I think God called him, but I know God's called him to be our leader. Now it's up to us. What are we going to do? Are we going to follow what God tells us to do? You know, there comes a time then sometime later here that Joshua makes that great statement, "As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord." And I think Brother Bayless, that's one of Brother Bayless's favorite verses there, I think, in the Bible, besides 2 Corinthians 5:17. I think this is another one of his favorite ones. But you know, as for me and my house, we're going to serve the Lord. You know, and that needs to be our testimony, you know. As long as you children are growing up with us, we're going to serve the Lord, you know. After you get out from under our roof, well, you know, you're on your own. But we want you to serve the Lord. We want you to be willing and ready to serve the Lord. We're trying to show you how to do it and all. And unfortunately, some of the children don't want to do that, you know. And what do we do? Well, about the only thing we can do is talk when God tells us to talk, but always be in prayer for them. It is good to remember what God has done. It is good to thank Him. It is good to fear Him. All the people of the earth should know God's power and love. But you know, there's people that take God so lightly. We see that in our everyday living. We see it in the government. We see it in authority. And we see it every day as we might see the children that we work with. We see parents. We see teachers. And how lightly they take God. Some of the words that comes out of people's mouths, is not reverent at all, And it's like Brother Bayless, I think it was Wednesday night, bringing out some things, that comes out of mouths of people that are very unreverent. Very, what's a word for unreverent? But you know what I mean. Just disrespectful and all. God is to be respected. God is to be respected. God is to be more than respected. He's to be worshipped. And so we can't, with words that comes out of the mouths of people, good and well they can't be respecting God by the way they talk. All the people of the earth should know God's power and love. We should tell them. That's part of our commission that God has given to us, to tell them. We should tell our children what He had done and how He will save them. And I think most of us has done that. But it's like I said last Sunday, I believe it was last Sunday, we can't do it for them. We can't. We'd like to, but there's no way that we can do it. Memorials are symbols to help us remember. But most of all, we are not to worship them. God, Him only shall you worship. Isn't that what Jesus told the devil when he was tempted in the wilderness? If you'll just fall down and worship me, the devil said, if you'll just fall down and worship me, I'll give you all the... And Jesus says, no, God is who we're to worship, and Him only. And if He is the only one we're to worship, that don't mean we can have something else to worship. That don't mean that we can have something to co-worship, because that won't work. That won't work. Between the two lines, I like that saying that between the two lines, we need understanding of the Bible more than interpretation of it. I read that and I thought, how many interpretations of the Bible is there? Some of them are right. Some of them are good. Interpretation is good. But if we have the understanding in our heart and in our lives, nobody can misinterpret it that we will fall for. If we have the real understanding, if God gives us real understanding of the Bible and of the things that He has, when He reveals something to me, that sticks in my mind pretty hard. It's like a bear trap, it grabs a hold of it and hangs on. A lot of times an interpretation of somebody else, I may not quite see all of it, and I don't quite get all of it, and sometimes it kind of fades away then. But when God gives you the understanding of something, it grabs, seems like in my mind, it grabs a hold of it and won't let go. And that's I like that saying there. There's a couple of questions in the junior quarterly that I want to read. Where was the Ark of the Covenant while the people went across the Jordan River? Where were they standing? They were right in the middle, wasn't they? If that wall of water would broke loose, who do you think would have went first? It'd have been them. Yeah, it'd have been them, because they were probably, it probably come out like this, and then it went down. And probably right in the middle is probably the lowest point, you know. And you know, if a wall of water comes flooding down a river, you don't want to be in the lowest point because you're going to get swept away. But you know, they knew they had God with them. And when God told them, that's where I want you to be, that's where they were then. And what was last Sunday's? Be strong and of good courage. You know, them priests, I don't know how many there was, 4 or 6, or might have been more than that, was standing there. They had to be strong and they had to be of good courage. Tell one thing about the memorial. It was set up so that it would make younger generation ask questions. I think a lot of it was set up. Why is this? Why is this? That gives the parents or the grown-ups an opportunity to tell them. And why did they make it? Well, I kind of explained that, so it'd give them when did the waters go back in place? Well, I think we read that in our lesson there. As soon as the Ark of the Covenant, let me back up. As soon as everybody was out of there, they went back and got the rocks. Remember them big old rocks, and carried them out. They were out. And the last ones, who was the first one to go into the water? It was those priests, wasn't it? Well, it looks like if they was the first ones to go in, they'd be the first ones out. But it didn't work that way, did it? They were the last ones out, and when their feet hit the ground, then above the water, that's when the water came back together. You know, God has a plan. Like I said, God has a plan for each and every one of us, you know. And as we go through trials and temptations, God's going to be with us if we will do what He tells us to do. Don't get ahead of Him. Don't drag too far behind Him. Don't go off to the side, left or right. But stay right where God told. You know, them people had to stay so far away from the Ark of the Covenant too. When they was coming up to the river, they had to stay so far away from it, you know. But then as they went through, they might have got a little closer. I don't know about that, but anyway, it was God's will then. And then that's when when God took care of them and did what He said He would do. And so I'm going to leave that with you. Our next lesson is our last lesson of the quarterly, the fall of Jericho, and that'll be the first city that they come to. And so we'll see what happens there then.